My name is Eva, and this is the story of how, in the middle of my darkest moment, abandoned, humiliated, pregnant, and alone, the universe delivered a stranger who changed everything. A man I wasn't meant to meet, but who, somehow, became the reason I survived. Let me take you back. I was 7 months pregnant when my world fell apart. I remember the exact day because I had just finished setting up the crib in what was supposed to be our baby's room: pale green walls, soft yellow curtains, a mobile with tiny felt clouds I had made myself. I even cried a little, standing there, imagining our future. That was the last time I cried for joy. When Liam, my husband, walked in that night, he didn't even look at the room. His eyes didn't soften. His hands didn't reach for my belly the way they used to. He just stood there, cold, distant, and said the words that burned a hole through my soul. I want a divorce. I'm moving out. No explanation. No apology. Just detachment. I stared at him, thinking it was a cruel joke. That maybe he was overwhelmed. That maybe we could talk. But then he pulled out his phone and showed me the photo. Him. With another woman. Her hand resting on his chest. And her very visible baby bump. She's due a month before you, he said flatly. We didn't plan it. But I'm going to be there for this child. I owe her that. I felt my knees buckle. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of the casualness of it. He spoke as if I were a business deal he was backing out of. As if our child was now a complication. In the weeks that followed, my life unraveled. Liam stopped answering my calls. The rent went unpaid. I found out he had removed his name from our joint lease and emptied our savings account. My pregnancy left me unable to take on new work. I was a freelance artist, juggling small commissions between waves of nausea and aching feet. Friends disappeared too. Some chose sides. Some were mutual friends who found it too awkward. I went from planning baby names to Googling shelters that accepted single pregnant women. It was during one of those sleepless nights, hungry, panicked, and exhausted, that I found myself walking down a snowy street at nearly midnight, just trying to breathe. The cold air hit my lungs like needles, but I didn't care. I just needed to feel something. That's when I saw him. Or rather, that's when he saw me. A car swerved, tires screeching on the icy road. I barely had time to turn before headlights blinded me. Then, impact. But not with me. A man. He had pushed me out of the way. And he took the hit. I remember screaming. Not just from fear, but from the sound, the sickening crunch of metal and bone and pavement. I scrambled to my knees, ignoring the pain in my hip and elbow, and crawled toward him. He was lying in the snow, blood pooling beneath his head, eyes fluttering but conscious. He looked at me like he was trying to say something. But all I could say was, "Don't move. Please. Help is coming." I called 911 with frozen fingers. My voice shook. I told them I was pregnant. That someone had saved me. That he wasn't breathing right. When the ambulance came, I rode with him. I didn't even know his name. But I couldn't leave him. Because he had saved me when no one else would. Because in a world that had turned its back on me, a stranger had risked everything for a woman he didn't know. And somewhere, deep down, I knew this moment wasn't random. This was the start of something I couldn't yet explain. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and silence. It had been 3 days since the accident. 3 days of pacing in circles. 3 days of reliving that moment, the blinding headlights, the fall, the way he crumpled to the ground without hesitation. 3 days of not knowing his name, his story, or whether he would even wake up. But I couldn't stay away. I visited every morning, walking down the long corridor with swollen ankles and a heart that beat faster than it should. The nurses knew me by now. They didn't ask why I came. They just nodded gently and let me sit outside his room. He was in the ICU. His injuries were severe: broken ribs, fractured arm, a concussion that had left him unconscious for 2 full days. But now, finally, he was stable, awake, aware, and ready for visitors. I hesitated before walking in. What was I even going to say? "Hi, I'm the pregnant woman you saved from being run over. I don't know your name, but I owe you my life." But when I opened the door, he was already looking at me. Not confused. Not startled. Just quietly amused. "You're the girl who landed on me," he said, his voice raspy and cracked. I blinked. "You're the man who stopped me from becoming roadkill." We both smiled. And just like that, the ice broke. His name was Noah. No last name offered at first. Just Noah. He asked how the baby was. I told him the doctor said we were both fine, that there were no complications, and that my bruises would fade. He looked relieved. Almost more relieved than I had been. I stayed for nearly 2 hours that day. He was sharp, despite the trauma. Dry sense of humor. Intelligent eyes. The kind of man who seemed used to solving other people's problems, but not his own. As the days passed, we talked more. And that's when I learned the rest. Noah was rich. Unimaginably rich. But he didn't wear it. There were no Rolexes, no designer hospital robes, no entourage. Just an old flannel blanket folded on the edge of the bed and a phone he barely touched. He had made his fortune in software, something to do with medical data encryption, sold to investors years ago. He was one of those early startup geniuses you'd only hear about in Forbes articles or documentaries. But here, in this room, he looked like a man who hadn't felt human in a long time. I thought I was doing something useful with my life, he said once, staring at the ceiling. But in the end, I lost everyone. He told me about his brother, the only person he'd ever trusted, who had stolen from him and disappeared. About his fiancée, who walked out 6 weeks before their wedding. About the business partners who sold him out for a higher stake. I stopped believing people were worth saving, he said. Until I saw you. Standing there. Lost. And I thought, maybe just once, I could do something that mattered. His voice broke. And I realized then, this man didn't just save me. I might have saved him, too. I visited him every day for the next 2 weeks. We never talked about what came next. I was still technically married, at least on paper, and living on the edge of eviction. He was recovering from surgery, barely able to sit upright without wincing. We were two broken souls orbiting each other in a hospital room that smelled like metal and second chances. And then one morning, I walked in and found an envelope waiting for me. It had my name on it. Eva. Inside was a letter. Short. Simple. You saved my life more than I saved yours. Let me help you now. No strings. No pity. Just someone who finally has a reason to care again. Below that was a hotel room key. And a note from the hospital. Noah had checked himself out. No forwarding address. No goodbye. Just silence. And a gift I wasn't sure how to accept. I stood outside the hotel room door with the key in my hand for nearly 10 minutes. It wasn't a regular room. This was a luxury suite. Not just clean, but curated. The kind of place people like me only ever saw in magazines, not real life. A brass placard by the door read, Penthouse 11B. I had walked through the lobby with my hand over my belly, trying not to look out of place, my thrifted coat too tight, my boots scuffed. But no one stopped me. No one questioned anything. I finally slid the key into the lock, and the door clicked open with a soft beep. And what I saw inside, it wasn't just a room. It was a message. The lights were dim, warm. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old paper, like a bookstore after rain. There was a living room with velvet chairs. A kitchen stocked with fruit and tea and snacks. In the bedroom, a crib. A crib. Set up beside a queen-sized bed. Brand new. White. Sturdy. There was even a soft baby blanket draped over the edge, pale blue with stitched stars. I stepped inside slowly, like I'd entered some sacred space. My fingers brushed the blanket. It wasn't a dream. This was real. And on the coffee table? Another note. It's not charity. It's hope. Stay here as long as you need. The world was cruel to you. Let this place be different. No name. No contact. Just his silent way of saying, you mattered. I sank into the couch and let the tears come. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in months, maybe years, someone had seen me. Not as a burden, not as a problem, but as a person. The days that followed were quiet. I didn't hear from Noah. But every day, the hotel staff slipped small envelopes under the door, receipts marked paid in full. Deliveries arrived. Groceries, vitamins, maternity clothes that actually fit. Someone was thinking about me. Planning for me. Caring. Without asking for anything. I started sleeping again. I started sketching again, something I hadn't done since Liam walked out. I opened my sketchbook and began with simple things. The folds of the blanket, the curve of a coffee mug, the reflection of city lights on the window glass. I was slowly remembering who I used to be before the betrayal, before the survival mode. And then, one afternoon, a knock came at the door. I hesitated. No one knocked here. I opened it. And there he was. Noah. Standing with a bouquet of sunflowers, awkwardly, like he wasn't sure why he brought them. He looked thinner. Pale. Healing, but still hurting. I didn't want to show up unannounced, he said. But I also didn't want to stay gone forever. I stepped aside. He entered like someone returning home, not because he belonged there, but because something inside him hoped he might be allowed to. We sat. In silence, at first. Then I said, "You didn't owe me anything." "I know," he replied. "But I owed myself something. I spent so long thinking everyone would betray me. And then I met someone who didn't ask for anything but still gave me everything. I looked at him, and something in my chest shifted. I didn't love him, not yet, but I trusted him. And that was more than I could say for anyone else in my life. We spent the evening talking about dreams we had abandoned, about names we liked for babies, about the things money could never fix, like loneliness, guilt, and heartbreak. When he left that night, he didn't ask to stay, but he did say, "I'll be nearby if you ever need me." I didn't know what this was becoming. I just knew. I wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time, the future didn't terrify me. It whispered, "Something better is coming." Time passed quietly. The snow melted. The city thawed. And with it, so did I. I stayed in the penthouse through the final weeks of my pregnancy. I made it a home as much as I could. I hung sketches of the city on the walls. I played soft music in the morning. I started talking to my baby out loud, like she could hear and understand everything I said. Noah visited almost every day now. Not always with flowers. Sometimes with books. Sometimes with pastries. Once, he brought a tiny stuffed giraffe and said, "I walked past a toy shop and thought she'd like it." She. We hadn't talked about what he meant by she. The baby wasn't his, not biologically. But I was starting to feel like biology didn't matter. Not when he spoke with that quiet on his voice. Not when he looked at my stomach like it meant something sacred. And then one night, everything changed. It was around 2 a.m. when the pain started. Not the dull ache of swollen feet or a sore back. No, this was sharp, rhythmic, real. I'd read the books. I'd seen the movies. But nothing prepares you for the moment your body tells you, "This is it." I called Noah. I didn't even think. I just grabbed the phone and pressed his name. He answered on the second ring. "I'm coming," he said before I could even finish saying the word contractions. 15 minutes later, we were in his car, speeding toward the hospital. He didn't ask questions. He just held my hand between contractions and said, "You're doing great," even when I was sobbing and cursing under my breath. Labor lasted 8 hours. It was brutal. There were moments I thought I couldn't do it, that my body would give out, that I'd fall apart completely. But Noah was there, every second. And when she finally came into the world, a perfect, pink, squirming miracle, he was the one who whispered, "You did it," while tears slipped down his cheeks. The nurse asked if I wanted someone to cut the cord. I looked at him, and he stepped forward with shaking hands. He didn't say a word. He just nodded, his eyes locked on mine, and I knew this moment was bigger than both of us. We named her Lila. I chose it, but he said it was beautiful, and he was right. She was beautiful. Tiny fingers. Soft breath. That smell, the warm, new baby scent that wraps around your heart like a lullaby. Noah held her like she was made of glass. Careful. Reverent. Like she was the first real thing he'd touched in years. "She's everything I thought I'd never deserve," he said one night, days after we brought her back to the suite. And then he told me the truth. The whole truth. Years ago, Noah had proposed to a woman named Elise. She was smart, strong, independent, the kind of woman who made him believe he could have a normal life, even with the chaos of his career. But she miscarried. Late term. And it broke them. Not because they didn't love each other, but because grief swallowed them both whole. "I walked away because I didn't know how to stay," he told me. "I thought I ruined her. I thought I ruined everything I touched." He had buried the idea of being a father, of being enough. Until Lila. He didn't say he loved me, but he didn't need to. Because love was in every bottle he warmed, every diaper he changed, every time he stood between us and the world without being asked. He was already hers. And maybe, just maybe, he was already mine too. It had been 4 weeks since Lila was born. 4 weeks of quiet mornings and lullabies. Of watching Noah doze off in the rocking chair, Lila curled up on his chest. Of learning what it meant to be truly supported, not just with words, but with presence. I had stopped checking my phone obsessively. Stopped waiting for a knock on the door that never came. Until it did. It was a Thursday afternoon. Lila had just fallen asleep in the bassinet, and I was sketching, something I hadn't done since the delivery. My pencil moved lazily across the page when I heard it. A knock. Firm. Unfamiliar. I froze. Noah was out, running errands. When I opened the door, everything inside me turned cold. Liam. In the flesh. The man who had walked out on me. Who had chosen another woman, another child, another life, over us. And now he was standing at my door, clean-shaven, smug, wearing a new suit like it could rewrite history. "Eva," he said, voice smooth. "I heard you had the baby." I said nothing. I'd like to meet my daughter. My daughter. The words hit like a slap. I stepped out into the hallway, shutting the door gently behind me so Lila wouldn't wake. You don't get to call her that, I said. He laughed, like I was being dramatic. You think just because I made mistakes, I don't have rights? She's mine, legally. My hands clenched at my sides. She's not a possession. She's a person. One you abandoned while she was still in the womb. He looked around the hall, sneering. Nice place. Must be nice having someone take care of you again. Who is he, huh? This guy playing daddy while you leech off his money. I didn't flinch. Because I realized something in that moment. Liam hadn't changed. He still saw people, me, our child, as tools. Extensions of his ego. Prizes to win or discard. He wasn't here for Lila. He was here to win. To reassert control. I'm not the scared girl you left, I said, voice low. I don't need your money. I don't need your name. And Lila? She doesn't need a man who ran away the second things got hard. His expression twisted. You think you can keep her from me? I don't think, I said. I know. And then I handed him a sealed envelope from my back pocket. Inside was a court order. I had already filed for sole custody weeks ago, with documentation of his abandonment, his absence, the drained bank accounts, the fact that he hadn't so much as texted me until now. Liam ripped it open, skimmed the contents, and paled. You've got to be kidding me. No, I said. This is me protecting my daughter. From men like you. He started to speak again, but I turned and walked back inside. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and collapsed against it, heart racing. Noah appeared a few minutes later, arms full of groceries. He looked at me, saw my face, and without a word, put the bags down and pulled me into his arms. That night, I watched him rock Lila to sleep. She curled into his shoulder like she'd been born for it. And I knew. This wasn't just a second chance. This was my chance to finally choose peace. To choose love. To choose a future not built on desperation, but intention. A few months later, the court finalized everything. Full custody. No visitation rights. Liam never showed up to the hearing. And I didn't need him to. Because I already had everything I needed. A daughter. A partner. A home. People always say life doesn't hand you fairy tales. Maybe that's true. But sometimes, life hands you a wreck. And inside that wreck, you find something unexpected. Someone worth rebuilding for. And if you're lucky, they help you rebuild yourself.